President and CEO of Automate, Mike Esposito, joins us now here in our Atlanta studio. Mike, it's always great to catch up to you, always great insight whenever we speak. Thanks so much for coming by.
Good, glad that you have me today.
All right, so Mike, I know that one of the big things that you and Automate pride yourselves on is the employee experience that's involved with the company. Fifth year in a row now, you've won Best Place to Work in New York's Capital District. Talk about, from an employee standpoint at a dealership and from a dealership manager standpoint as well, why is it so important for employees to be valued at a dealership, and what does it mean for the overall business?
Well, you know, one of the things that we always say is that unless your employees love your company, your customers aren't going to love your company. So it's very difficult in a dealership. You know, I ran a dealership for about 6 years. There's really this kind of caste system in a dealership with the dealer and then the general sales manager and then the employees.
Right.
From the standpoint of running a dealership or running a business in general, most cases people look at a business, they say, well, the people that comes first are the owner or the shareholders, like say if you're a publicly traded company.
Right.
And then the customer, because we always want the customer first, and then the employee. Well, that's kind of backwards. You know, at Automate, I believe, at running the company, that the employees come first, then the customers, then the shareholder. Because if I have happy employees and loyal employees, then I'll have happy customers. And if I have happy customers who are loyal to Automate, I then have very happy shareholders, if you will, because we make a lot of money because we have customers who are happy. So it's not a difficult equation to understand. It's a difficult equation to actually implement, because you really, really have to be focused on, truly care about the employees.
Yeah. You know, let's kind of cut to the heart of the matter here. Obviously, in the automotive industry, turnover rate is something that we see a lot of on the retail side. From a dealership perspective, there's a lot of turnover when it comes to sales and also on the service drive as well. Talk about why that mentality has really been difficult to catch on, while as in other industries, a lot of companies are going that route of having employees first and letting that trickle-down effect take place. Why is it so difficult in the automotive industry?
Well, I think one of the things, there's a great book by a gentleman named Daniel Pink called Drive, and it's What Motivates Us. Historically, and we can do probably an hour show on dealership pay plans, okay? But historically, the pay plans in a dealership, and a lot of companies based in the 1920s, from the standpoint of their behavioral science of the carrot and the stick. Okay? You know, if you do this, then you'll get that. Okay? And what the science has proven over the last probably 40 years is that really doesn't work. It works fine if you are working on a production line, if you will, and you're getting paid on how many widgets you're doing. Because it's a monotonous kind of task. But when you're talking about something that you need to have creativity, that you want people energized in, like sales, okay, you really want if-then, or now-that rewards. Now that you've done this, then I'll give you that. But people don't know that they're going to get the reward. So one of the problems with dealerships is when you have a salesperson, and the salesperson is on a total commission, right? So because if you don't sell anything, you're going to be minimum wage. Right. Okay. So how do you attract good people from the standpoint of that you really want to have in a dealership, when really you're interviewing people and you're kind of doing that, your interview is the mirror test, you put the mirror under the nose and breathe in, okay, they can sell cars, okay? As opposed to bringing in people who you can train and you can invest in, and they don't see the customer as gross dollars, if you will. Everybody gets paid off the gross in a dealership, right? So if I'm looking at you as how much gross can I make off you, I probably am not going to give you the customer experience that I really need to give you. Okay? So, and there's a lot of companies, a lot of franchise car dealers right now that are changing that. There's Sonic is starting to do it now, where they're putting some of their salesmen on commission or going to a one price. And you don't have to be a one price to do it, but helps.
It definitely helps.
Putting salesmen not on commission, but putting them on salaries. Right. And BMW is starting to do it. So you're starting to see a lot of the dealers saying maybe it's the Apple thing when you talk about the experience of going to the Apple store, of they don't really have any salespeople, that type of thing. I think that you're going to see a lot more of that in the more successful dealerships.
Yeah, and then I would imagine too that kind of a structure takes the pressure off of the salespeople, lets them be a little bit more confident in what they're doing, and then also in turn maybe makes them a little bit more loyal, a little bit more happy about where they're working, which has that trickle-down effect, as you mentioned there. Talk about the online versus offline experience. I know that there's a lot of attention being placed right now in the online experience for a customer and how a dealership needs to interact online. But I got to imagine with that kind of focus that a little bit of the in-store experience is suffering because of that. Is that what you're seeing as well, that those relationships aren't being established offline as much as they are online?
Yeah, I think so. I think that people are coming. It's different. When I sold cars, when I was in the dealership, you have somebody came in. They didn't know anything about the car. They didn't know because there wasn't. It's been a long time, so there wasn't the internet. I think we were using tin cans and string at that point. But so you had the perfect information. They didn't. Okay. Whereas today, somebody walking in who has gotten all of the information, has gotten the invoices, it's a really different scenario that you go through with them. You really want them to feel comfortable with you. So it's more of how do I, as a salesperson, build rapport with the customer, because he's already got the information.
Right.
How do I make him believe that this is the experience that they need to have here at Mike Chevrolet, if you will? So it is different because people today, especially the millennials, are coming in with that perfect information. Okay? I think one of the things, we were talking about earlier, is the people at Google talk about when you get to your website, the customer should have an orgasmic experience when they are at your website, right? Well, that really should translate to when they get to your store, when they come to your store. Why aren't your salespeople and your service writers giving your customers an orgasmic experience when they hit your store? Well, so we spend a lot of money looking at how we can do customer loyalty programs. I think that, as I said earlier, until you have employees that love your company, you're not going to have customers that love your company. So maybe you take some of that loyalty money that you're spending with, and I don't want to offend any of the software vendors that do loyalty programs, but maybe you take some of that and really, let's say, how do we deal with our employees to make them really the ambassadors for the dealership?
Well, I know it's something that you have implemented with Automate, and it seems to be working for your company there. As you mentioned there, the employees that you have on your team, really loyal, and that's really a credit to your success. Before we let you go here, let's talk about the importance of hiring the right person in the first place. I got to imagine that this goes a long way. Talk about the interview process and bringing on the right talent for a dealership.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, we go through extensive interviews. Somebody who's coming into our store or to the company usually has at least 5 different interviews they go through, and then we do a profile. They take an assessment, and we actually have an outside company that does it. That we do an assessment of them. Does their personality fit? Okay, I believe, as Herb Kelleher, who was the founder of Southwest, has always said, we hire for attitude. I can always teach the skills. Because if you don't have the right attitude, no matter how skillful you are, you're not going to be the right employee.
Right.
So we go through a lot of training when we get the employees, but also within that assessment, what we want is people who aren't customer-centered. We want people who are other-centered, meaning that they care not only about the customers, but they care about the other employees that they work with. That's a great point. Okay? You really have to be a team player, okay? And I think that when people feel like people have got their back, we have, at Automate, we have the sense of ohana. Okay? Ohana is the Hawaiian word for family. Okay, and one of the fun things we do during the year is we have a big Hawaiian day. Everybody comes in, the flowered shirts. We have a truck comes in that actually brings in Hawaiian food.
Oh,
and
nice.
We have shave ice. That comes in.
We were getting an invite to that.
Right, you guys.
Okay. Good.
And so, but it's a sense of ohana, a sense of family that we have your back, and everybody in the company understands that. Nobody's trying to put something over somebody so they can get ahead or any of that.
Right.
Maybe in a lot of dealerships, our culture is a lot different than what you might see in a dealership. But it does start with hiring the right people. There's a lot of books out there about hiring, but it really comes down to you really just can't hire anybody who walks in the door. You really have to make sure they fit your culture. And to have that, you really should understand what your culture is and what the core values are of your culture. You know? And are you willing as a dealer to run a value-based company? You know? If you have a core value, and this has nothing to do with spiritualism. I think it's about what everybody has values, right? You know, I might ask you what your values are. It's like, well, it's honesty, it's humility, it's whatever. The companies have core values also, and everybody who works for that company should adhere to those core values. Because if they don't, then they shouldn't be working for the company. Okay? And it's very difficult in a dealership sometimes when there's a lot of pressure on making that gross, that people sometimes might step outside of that, and at that point you have to make a very, very tough decision. Will that person continue to work for me even though maybe he sells or she sells 30 cars or trucks a month, but she doesn't or he doesn't adhere to our core values? That's a tough decision to make. But if you're going to run a value-based company and you're saying this and you're going to walk the talk, you need to do what the right thing is. So.
Well, let's look at it from the other side. I mean, you mentioned there's somebody that might be absolutely killing it, so to speak, when it comes to the sales and doing a great job, exceeding those expectations, but doesn't fit into the company values and the company mold. And now on the other end of that, let's say you have somebody, a salesperson, service advisor, whatever the job may be, that does fit in. They fit into the company. They work well with the team. They work well with customers, but they're not hitting those numbers. What does the dealership need to do at that point? I mean, is that just one of those things where it's not a fit? Or do they work with that person to try to bring them up to speed?
Well, that's absolutely a great question. There's a book by Jim Collins called Good to Great. Okay? And one of the things that Collins talks about, and Good to Great is how good companies became great companies. Okay? And it should be required reading of anybody who's running a company. Okay? And one of the things he talks about is running a company is like having this bus. Okay? And you have the bus and you're going to put all your employees on the bus. But what you want to do is when you put the employees on the bus, you want to find the right seat, the right person for the right seat.
Okay.
So in the scenario you just brought up, you have the right person maybe in the wrong seat. And this has happened to me at Automate, where we've had people who are just terrific employees, but they just weren't getting it done in the job. So the first thing we look around is saying, okay, we got a great employee. Maybe they just don't get it in this position. Maybe there's another position in the company that they could do better. Okay? And moving that person to another position, we found it's happened 3 times. We found that it's worked dramatically better, that they become just an even better employee. Because they were over the head in the other job, whatever that job was. But they had the right attitude. Back to I have the right attitude, let's teach them the skills. Let's get them in the right position. So yeah, I mean, certainly, a dealership of any size has different areas that you can move people into. You certainly try to do the training. But when you have somebody who really loves your company and wants to do whatever they can do to move your company forward, it's almost like you really need to find them someplace in the company, because those people don't come along every day.
That's a great point. I love that, and I'm definitely going to follow up on that book. Mike, before we let you go, what's happening at Automate? I know you guys have something coming up next year, a lot of changes, some software updates for the clients out there. Talk about that.
Yeah, so with the Automate, we have a 99% retention rate with our dealers, and all our dealers know they're on a month-to-month. They can leave us at any time, but they stay with us because one of the things they understand is we give them not only free training for life on the system, but we also give them free upgrades. So we have a lot of new features coming out that our dealers will be getting basically gratis. They pay for the support, they pay for it, and from that standpoint, and they'll just get it. So for 2015, a lot of new things coming out. You got to wait to 2015 NADA to see them. Okay, but there'll be a lot of stuff. Please stop by the booth. We'd love to show you.
We most certainly will. Well, there it is, 2015, a lot of changes coming up for Automate. Stay tuned to CBT News. We'll have those as they become available in January. Mike, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you.